The story is from Lime Cherry. Manipulative Power Hungry Aunt torments my family for years. Costs her $300,000. Dealt with my manipulative, abusive aunt all my life. Finally got revenge. Players, myself, late 30s. Sister, 3 years younger. Aunt, older sister to my mother. Mother, single mom, adopted. No blood relation to my aunt. Cousins, 3 total. 1M, 2F. I have good relationships with them now mostly. My estranged father, who had been living several counties over, is pretty much out of the picture by the time my parents got their divorce when I was 9. Due to financial hardship, we were forced to live with my aunt and the nightmare of a household we would soon find ourselves in. My aunt married into Georgia wealth, and you can figure out what that means on your own. She had 3 kids and eventually caught her husband having an affair. It's a huge scandal. She gets the house, the kids, and a fat payout from the family attorney. This is important because my aunt didn't do a damn thing in her life to earn her money, her house, her lifestyle, or basically anything. She was born poor along with my mom. Under her household, she was drunk with power. Years of therapy have allowed me to recognize that certain people, when in a position of power, get a perverse pleasure in ordering others to do their bidding. She was the strictest of authoritarians in every possible way you could imagine. Chores had to be completed by an exact specific time. Vacuuming by 3:45 p.m., dishes by 3:55 p.m. Laundry days for my mother-less kids were Tuesdays, 5:35 p.m., 7:55 p.m. If it was still running, she would shut the power off for the 2 units. As we grew older, her own kids opted to stay with their father for full-time custody, and she had them on weekends. Even they couldn't stand her when she was in charge and in the house. As time passed, she got them less and less opting for alternating weekends as high school activities took precedence over time with mother. For my sister and I, the large 6-bedroom house was not ours for the taking. My mom had to pay rent as well as rent for 1 bedroom, as that was all she could afford on her salary. We had to share a bedroom until my 2nd year of HS. All the while, there was 1 spare unused bedroom available at all times. My aunt needed this for guests when they stayed over. Not 1 guest stayed there in the 10 years I was under that roof. Finally, the church we attended told my aunt to give up the spare bedroom so my sister can have her own room, as it was unhealthy for 2 teenagers sharing a room together like that. That infuriated my aunt because someone told her what to do in her own household. My sister and I got the brunt of her wrath. As my mom's salary was tapped out, my sister and I had done extra chores like mowing the lawn, trimming the shrubs, cleaning the pool, which we could no longer use without her being outside watching us. My aunt's behavior was becoming more and more outrageous and disconnected from society. For example, she had always snapped her fingers when she wanted to get someone's attention, but it was getting far more frequent, and she would blow up into a tirade if either my sister and I didn't obey. Her own kids tried repeatedly to tell her that the shit she was doing was wrong, but she wouldn't listen. Eventually, they wanted nothing to do with her outside of the home. She was a tyrant there, and repeated intervention to get her to see the folly of her ways would fall on deaf ears. I snapped. All through HS, I had no confidence as a person. I was weak-willed and growing ever distant from friends and society. I say this in all truthfulness and fear, that had circumstances continued the way they had been going, I could very well have taken a gun to myself, or worse, to others around me. I was that bad off. I had just graduated HS and started my first semester of community college. I'm 2 weeks into my classes attending from home when my aunt drops a bomb on me. You owe me for this month's rent, the same amount for next month's rent as well. It is the 27th after all. You're an adult now. You're out of HS and working now, so you need to pay rent. I blew a gasket as I yelled back. You can't just suddenly decide to charge me rent just because you feel like it. I need 30 days notice. I have rights. My aunt yelled at me some bullshit excuse that she had discussed this with my mother, and it was decided that I needed to pay my own rent now. In some miraculous backbone move, of which I still have no idea how I stood up to her, I yelled right back at her. If I'm an adult, then treat me like and talk to me about rental agreements. I'll start paying you rent in 30 days starting the 1st. I turned my back to her and walked away with my fists balled tight. I was furious with anger, but I walked away. My aunt saw my fists from behind and screamed bloody that I was going to attack her. No, I wasn't. She snapped her fingers at me repeatedly on my tail to get my attention, but I didn't turn around. I needed to cool off and clear my head. As I turned the corner, she grabbed my wrist hard, yelling, "I'm not finished talking to you." I threw my still balled-up fist forward, keeping with my stride to break her grip as I hadn't stopped my momentum. This caused her grabbing arm to slam hard into the corner of the wall that I had just turned into. She screamed in pain, but I left the house and took off. The aftermath of that incident was that my aunt called the cops on me in an attempt to press charges. She was taken to the hospital and suffered a fractured wrist, and she was put in a cast sling. Don't know, as I never saw it and never inquired further. Her story changed every time she told the cops what happened, while my story was spot on every time. I can still recall that moment down to the smell in the house, where I was facing, the working and non-working light bulbs, etc. Forever ingrained in me. I was kicked out of the house, and I couldn't visit my sister or my mom there at the house again. Fine by me, as I didn't want to see my big aunt ever again. I was happy to meet my mother and sister at the local diner or outlet. We could be ourselves there and not hostages in our own home. Years later, my mom wised up and got out of that abusive relationship with her sister and moved out on her own. She got a temporary nice place, invested wisely, and with the help from the church, got help getting a place of her own. In 2009, after the housing crisis, she bought her own place that she could never have afforded on her own prior to the market crash. But some good came out of it. She wept knowing my sister and her family and myself can come visit any time and stay. Over the years, I've been able to forgive my aunt. Not forget, forgive. I've let go a lot of my anger and hatred toward her that she put me through. When she has no leverage or control over us, she's a somewhat decent person for being a total bitch of a person. My cousins have calmed down, heard my side of what happened those years ago, and know what kind of person I am, compared to what kind of person their mother is. They chose to believe me and know I didn't hit her or strike her or beat her across the face like she continues to claim. The revenge. While I have been able to forgive my aunt for what she has done to me, I cannot forgive her for what she did to my mother. Kept her in financial hardship for a decade while she sat on a bank account full of cash and assets. Or what she did to my sister. Forced her to pay for damages because the water heater burst while my aunt and mother was away one weekend, leaving my sister at home. She didn't discover the flooded rooms for hours, my aunt's reasoning. It was her responsibility to watch the house, not the responsibility of the homeowner to replace the water heater before it goes. Let's leave that upfront $5,000 financial burden before the flood insurance kicks in on a 16-year-old girl. I've had little to no contact with my aunt since I was kicked out of the house nearly 2 decades ago, but I do keep in constant contact with my cousins. While I'm not going to divulge what I do for a living, I can say that I work with and for the government. I've worked my ass off getting to where I'm at today. I'm known for being truthful, wise, and giving good advice when asked. Because of this, I often talk financially with my cousins, all of whom are money smart and are doing well for themselves. They often then relay this information to their scheming mother, who has no mind for business and investments. All that money she got from her house sale, her divorce settlement, her previous investments is pretty much gone. I spent years planning on the perfect trap, and it took a long time to prepare everything to make sure everything appeared right. Ianel and I don't pretend to know the law, but I do know the regulations and laws pertaining to insider information. This is not that. 100% certain of it, and if I ever go to court, I know my lawyer has a solid case in my defense. But is this a gray area? Most definitely. I let slip to my cousins about some future real estate plans near my aunt's new area of living. It may be worth a lot more because of future development taking place in the area. All of that was true and backed up by what was in the newspaper and new construction signs that newly appeared on Google Maps at the time. The rest was fabricated by myself, backed up by actual information I looked up on real estate websites and on projects I was working on through my work. The telephone game takes place, and a few weeks later, I presume, my aunt starts making phone calls to real estate agents trying to buy lots of land in the undeveloped area of her new house. Over the course of a few months to a half a year, she spends $300,000 of her last remaining savings on land, hoping it will pay out when the area around it gets developed in the upcoming years. Only, HUD Government City doesn't have any plans to develop in those immediate areas. In fact, analysis showed that building in those areas was poor planning and would cost the taxpayers 2 to 3 times as much as the land was not environmentally sound. It was best to build 6 miles away. This post was long overdue because it's been over 2 years since my aunt purchased land that is basically worthless. See, she won't sell the land unless she gets at least the same price she paid for it because she's the owner of that land. Can't tell her what to do on her own land. Sweet karma strikes in a way I couldn't possibly have foreseen. My cousin informed me that the value of the land has decreased significantly because it's not environmentally sound to build anything commercial there, but it's zoned for commercial use. Currently, 3 of the 4 blocks of land she purchased are just weed farms next to eyesore abandoned buildings or industrial complexes. Nobody can build on it, and nor does anyone want to buy it. Sucks to be her. Best part is, my cousins have absolutely no idea that I set them up for their mother to take the fall. These environmental results are relatively new and the perfect cover to say why the project changed locations 6 miles away. TL. Dr. Abusive. Aunt torments my family and myself for a decade and more. Decades later, I am in a position to trick her buying worthless land. Icing on the cake, that land can't be used for its intended purpose and has devalued significantly. Note, there seems to be some confusion as to my cousins being cheated out of their inheritance. Their father and his side of the family is still extremely wealthy, and each of my cousins are money-wise and financially independent. Yes, there is more to this story, but none I can confirm or follow up on at this time. The revenge was masterfully planned and flawlessly executed. After years of manipulation and control, the aunt's greed and arrogance became her undoing. Tricked into investing her last savings in worthless land, she's now left with a devalued property she can't offload. The next story is from Unicorn Rainbow 666. Sweet, sweet revenge. So for starters, this is from about 2 years ago now. I used to work at very well-known pizza chain restaurant. If Scooby-Doo could say it, it would have called Romanos. I first started out there as just a cashier and would just do the normal stuff, running the register and placing orders. I eventually learned how to make the pizzas. Over time, the store manager wanted to promote me to shift runner. For those who don't know what that is, it's a step below assistant manager. So when I promoted, I'd be in charge of running the shift and delegate roles for the shift and tell employees when they could leave. Anyways, getting off topic, while I was working there was a guy who started there that had worked there before. When he was there before, he was an assistant manager. He left one day during a busy evening when the store was slammed with orders and customers. He apparently got too stressed out and couldn't handle it anymore. So 2 years later, he comes back, but now as a delivery driver. When he first started for the second time, I didn't know who he was and I had never met him before that. He seemed nice. At first, after a few days, he kept trying to be the person in charge. I had to put him in his place a few times when I was running the shift. Now, I wasn't on the best of terms with the store manager. We had a few blowouts here and there, mostly from him breathing down my neck when we were really busy. I snapped at him and told him to back off and let me do my damn job. So when I went to him to tell him about the delivery driver, we'll call him Brad, was trying to act as a manger, he didn't seem to really care. All right, whatever. I was talking to the one assistant manager that I was friends with. We'll call him Chad. I had told him the deal, and he told me to just tell him off. The next shift I worked with Brad, he again tried acting as the manager. I told him he isn't an assistant manager anymore, and he's driver and needs to stop as I'm the one that's in charge of the shift. He huffed and walked away from me. Everything was fine for a while. Well, one day I was sitting in the office taking care of a few things on the computer, and in comes Brad. He starts talking to me about an order and just messing around with me. As I'm finishing up on the computer, he kneels down, making it look like he's picking something up off the floor, so I don't pay him any mind. Next thing I know, he's jabbing a finger into my breast. I froze, unsure of what to do. A million things ran through my mind in a split second. Now, before I continue on, I should note this isn't the first time to happen to me in my life. When I was in high school, a guy thought it would be funny cool to grab my breast as hard as he could. One day, we were on the bus. In the end, I beat the living hell out of him. It took a few people to keep from doing some real damage. He then got expelled from the school. A year or two later, I had moved, and a similar situation happened on the bus again. This time, I didn't get a chance to do anything, because the school bus pulled up to his stop and he ran off the bus. Got him suspended from school, and his parents apologized to me, along with making him apologize as well. There's some other issues, but you get the point. So anyway, he jabbed my breast hard, and I froze. All those times I had that happen to me flashed through my mind. I got up and I went out, back slamming the door hard. I was pacing back and forth for a few minutes. I didn't know what to do, didn't know what to think. I was shaking from being utterly pissed off and from a feeling I couldn't recognize. Now this is the kicker. He comes out acting like nothing happened and telling me how I need to keep the back door locked because that's how the place got robbed before, 4 years ago, by the old store manager's son. Well, the conversation went a little like this. Me, I don't give a fuck. Leave me the fuck alone and go the fuck back inside. Brad, don't yell at me and curse at me. Me, dude, you really do not want to fuck me right now. Go the fuck back inside now. I'm not going to say it again. Brad, and what are you going to do if I don't? So before I can say another word, Chad comes out because he hears me yelling at Brad. When he sees how red my face is, he gets Brad back inside and then comes to check on me. At this point, I'm sitting in my car crying and shaking because I was so mad and so upset. I explained to him what happened. I lived with my mom at the time, and he told me to call her. So I did. I told her what happened, and she told me to call the store manager and tell him that something needs to be done about Brad. So I called the store manager, and this is the conversation. Me, hey, so I wanted to let you know that Brad was very inappropriate and sexually assaulted me. Blah, 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 you know the story. Store manager, oh my God, you guys seriously act like children. You all need to grow up. Me, what? Are you being serious right now? I need to grow up? Dude, one of your male employees assaulted me. Store manager, whatever, I'll take care of it. Bye. So when he said he would take care of it, he meant, I'm going to smack him on the hand and tell him that's not nice and send him home for the night. Okay, fine. I take it a step further and call the district manager. He doesn't answer, so I left a voicemail telling him that I needed to discuss something with him in regards to Brad and that if I didn't receive a phone call back, I was going to press charges on Brad. Never got a call back. So I take it another step further. I decide to file a police report, got my statement written up and had a court date set. Now mind you, the day he got arrested, we were all working. Myself, Chad, Brad, and store manager, plus a bunch of others. When the cop that I had given my statement to came in and arrested him, the look on Brad's face was amazing, and the look on store manager's face was priceless too. Store manager kept asking the cop why he was arresting Brad, and the cop said that he wasn't at liberty to tell him, and that if Brad would like to say, then he could tell him. Well, B was released a couple hours later, and turns out the district manager bailed him out. I was livid. So Brad came back to the store and told store manager what happened and why he was arrested. Well, I got sent home early because of the issue. I was told neither Brad nor myself would be allowed to return to work until after the issue was resolved in court. Well, my mum worked next door, and guess who she seen back at work the next day, having a jolly old time with store manager and district manager? You guessed it, Brad was back at work already. I call up the district manager and ask why Brad is allowed back, but I'm not. He spews a bunch of BS about how I have a toxic relationship with store manager, and that's why I'm not allowed back, and then offers me to work at a store over an hour away from me, not guaranteed the same position and pay. I told him to shove the job up his ass and to off with that bull and hung up on him. Court day comes, I show up and head over to my lawyer and my support lady that was there. The hearing gets underway, and the verdict, not guilty. Great. If only I had gotten this guy who we'll call Zach to come, not his real name for privacy reasons. Remember how I said Brad used to work there a few years ago? Well, that's when Zach was there. Zach was 16 then, and Brad was 32. He told Zach to get down on his knees and to suck Daddy's balls. If Zach had come to the hearing, I could have gotten a guilty verdict, but because I had no proof of what he did, he got off free. Well, this is where my revenge takes place. My entire family found about what happened, and I legally couldn't take to social media for legal purposes, but nothing ever said my family couldn't. Little did Brad, store manager, and district manager know, my family had a lot of connections and ties in the community. Within a day, everyone in the town, and in surrounding towns too, found out what had happened. Well, needless to say, they lost a lot of business. Rominos fired district manager, store manager, and Brad. They aren't ever allowed to work or come into any of the stores ever again. On top of that, somehow, in the midst of things, someone in town found out that the DM was cheating on his wife and told her. She divorced him and got everything. Everything could have been fine had DM called me back, or even just sided with me. But nope, he wanted to side with a pedophile predator. In the end, I still came out on top. TL, doctorate employee. Sexually assaults me, district manager and store manager protect him. Store gets boycotted, store loses sales, higher-ups find out what happened, the three of them get fired and blacklisted from all stores. District manager's wife, in the midst of everything, gets told by a local boycotter that he's been cheating on her. She divorces him and gets everything. The revenge was really cool and satisfying. Ignoring sexual harassment in the workplace is not a joke because it is a crime and can lead to many other crimes. OP did a wonderful job by sharing the story and ultimately getting the chain boycotted. Kudos to OP for standing up for herself.